Join us in our final installment with licensed marriage and family therapist Tracie Pinnock as she gives us great tips, insight, and tools to use within our relationships. She has some valuable information to share, and we appreciate her time.
Want to do their regular checkups to make sure they're, tracking the right way.
Absolutely. So that's one of the reasons why premarital counseling is such a great thing. But yes, regardless of whether you're planning to be married or not, I see it as couples checking in with one another around each individual's needs, desires, and expectations. So what I mean is, I talk with couples all the time about how there are so many things in a relationship in which it's not necessarily about one person being right or wrong. It's about us each having our own individual preferences and expectations and how those align or don't align with the other person. To use a very basic example, it's like if I happen to be somebody who is, I don't know, a little disheveled and disorganized, and I'm single in my own space, it just is what it is. That's not, right or wrong in and of itself. That I like to keep things here and this here and that there. It might become an issue when I'm now living with somebody and forming a life with them, and they have a certain way of organization and cleanliness, and the mine is different, and now we're butting heads. And so many couples issues are oftentimes around this idea of like, once we break it down, I'm helping people understand that, of course, you feel like you're right because that's your way and that's how you want it. But this other person is not just wrong in and of themselves. It's wrong or an issue because you two are now trying to come together and make this a cohesive thing. And so I think that when couples come in before their issues, like let's just take an example of like premarital counseling. I like to just go through a bunch of important life categories to have them answer for themselves and to one another. What are their expectations? Things that people often don't talk about until the issue comes up. So kids, how many kids do we want to have? Do you even want to have children? Where might we want to live? Do you think we'll stay in the same state forever? Would you ever want to move out of the country? How are we going to raise our kids? Discipline, religion, like anything you can think of are things that ideally you try to discuss before you make a committed, especially committed legal contract with somebody, but even before that, because if you can work those things out earlier, it's going to be a smoother ride down the road. Because a lot of things that couples end up coming to therapy for, once we boil it down, it's about he thought it was this way, she thought it was this way, and now we're butting heads because we realize we have differing expectations of one another, of what we can give and what we want to receive. And so a lot of it is really around clarifying those expectations.
She gave me so much stuff, and I don't have my pen to write stuff down. I did not bring my pen.
So, what is a typical session like for a person who's just, they're coming out of the woodwork, they're coming out the closet, they've just decided I'm going, because it sounds crazy, but I'm going to go to therapy. They've decided, they finally fought the stigma, they're looking for a therapist. And they're trying to figure out what is it going to look like. I think so many times people get stuck on this whole what things look like on television, where you're laying on the couch and your hands over your head and the therapist just is sitting there with the pad and they're never looking at you, they're never talking to you.
Right.
And they're like, I don't want that.
Right. And so you just named a whole bunch of things that I don't do. Some of them I do. I do write things down because personally I like to give myself notes to remind myself the next session of where I want to pick up. But I definitely look at people and I definitely talk to them.
Okay.
But actually I don't have a couch in my office. I have comfy chairs that people sit in, so they're not laying down on the sofa. But let me say this, everyone runs their practice differently, so I'm not speaking for all therapists. But I would say, typically what you should expect in the first session or two, the way I work is now I've actually moved things to an electronic system, which is the way things are going nowadays. So my clients, they have an initial phone call with me where I take basic information, address, email address, phone number, stuff like that, so that I can email them my intake documents beforehand.
Okay.
So before the session, they're able to read through and sign what they need to sign, so that once they come into the session, we have that part out of the way.
Which is great.
Right into the therapy. And it hasn't always been like that. That's been, the past less than a year or so where I've been able to have it done like that.
Okay.
And so, but that's great. We can get right to it. So then I always ask them if they have any initial questions of me, just like right off the top. They might have questions of what the process is going to look like, but generally speaking, I spell a lot of that out in my intake documents, my informed consent form that they sign. So I explain to them that in the first session or two, I have this kind of packet, which is an assessment. And ultimately what it does is help me collect information about their current and past experiences all the way back to childhood, so that I can become informed. I'm just meeting them for the first time. I don't know what's gone on in their lives, right? So I'm trying to do a crash course on their life in a sense, so that I can start, forming some ideas and thoughts about what might be going on and how I can be helpful to them. So I ask questions around, experience, have there been any, negative experiences that they've had, deaths, accidents, you name it. It's a whole checklist of things that I ask them. So I can get a read of like trauma that they may have experienced and things like that. I, of course, ask them about what their current concerns are, what's bringing them into therapy. And so that's what they can expect in the first couple of sessions. I explain to them that it is a lot of me just asking you a bunch of questions initially. Of course, we're talking, and if it's interesting because everyone's intake session can look different, because there are people who are very talkative and there are people who are not talkative at all. So there are people who I ask a question, they give me a quick, immediate answer, and we move on. There are other people who expand into a whole big story. And I always tell people, the more information you give me, the better, the more I have to work with. But, I'm going to ask you questions. So if you're not initially comfortable with immediately opening up, that's fine. I'll ask more questions to get that information. And I'm asking always from my understanding, because that's how I'm going to be best able to help you, is knowing as much as possible about what you've experienced. But in terms of what it actually, I guess, walking you through beginning to end, a person usually finds me online or through their insurance carrier. I'm on a directory called Therapy for Black Girls, which I think is an awesome directory to find Black mental health professionals in your
It's
area.
on Instagram as well.
Yes,
Yeah. Yep. I'm also on psychologytoday.com. That's how a lot of people find me. So then I'll call me up, say I'm interested in therapy. I ask a few basic questions to make sure we're a good fit. Like I said, I've been really focusing on now, women and couples. So I like to, find out, what are the issues that they're looking to address. Then I send them the paperwork through email. They fill that out. We schedule our appointment. They come, they show up. I always tell people, just wait in the waiting area and I'll come out and get you, just in case I'm running over from a previous session. Come out and get them, bring them in, ask them to take a seat, offer them candy and coffee and tea. And, we just, get started, and we start talking about what it is they need to talk about. What are they here for?
Okay. Cool.
Yes.
Yep, I do have a question.
I know. Go. He's the question guy.
I like to write my questions, so I'm not being rude while you're talking. When I listen, I pin my questions real quick, and then because I don't want to lose a thought, even though I may miss a thought while I'm writing while you're speaking. So
no worries.
You talked about premarital counseling entering into a marriage. So when my question is when it comes to marriages, would you say that looking for or allowing love to be the sole reason for entering into a marriage can lead to concerns later if you don't consider many of the premarital questions that you ask in that counseling?
Yes, absolutely. I think we all love the idea of love conquering all and being enough. But I do often have conversations with people of when it really gets down to it, is love alone enough? You can love someone and not be meeting their needs and them not meeting your needs outside of that, because there are a lot of other practical aspects to life. You can love someone, but also need to be raising children with them, and you want to be raising healthy, happy kids, right? And you can notice that there are behaviors or habits of this person that are not conducive to helping you raise children in the ways that you think they should be raised. And you can love them regardless. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're an ideal partner for X, Y, and Z. So it's this idea that I always talk about how the head and the heart don't always work in unison. So you can logically list reasons why someone maybe is not the ideal partner for you, but still emotionally be attached and connected to them, which is why so many of us stay in relationships longer than we should. That's just being human. It's the emotional connection to somebody who you can logically acknowledge isn't the best partner. That emotional connection is oftentimes what keeps us. There are also practical reasons, money, again, children, all sorts of things that feed into it, which just make it that much more complicated.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, yeah, going into a relationship purely based on loving someone and not looking at the practical ways in which you fit into one another's lives is kind of ripe for problems.
Mm-hmm. So this is a light opinion, and I'd like to hear your view on it. So I was sitting with a client of mine. I work in the security industry. So we went from talking about security, transitioned into talking about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm sitting with this client, strong, Black, female, and it was myself and a partner of mine, and there was two females, and they just wanted to ask this question. They asked us, were we married? We said yes. And then they would say, well, why is it with guys, guys seem to not like strong women or something like that, which I could have considered I guess an insult, because they didn't know either one of our wives, did not know how strong they were. But needless to say, when they were talking, they kind of asked this question based upon, they named all of their strengths and talked about their difficulty finding, someone to partner with or be in a relationship with, or a long-term successful relationship with. And so it led to this very long conversation. But the question I asked them, and I'll ask you this, the question I asked them was, I said, when it comes to dating and, the question of love not being enough, I said, when it comes to this playlist or the list that many people have, I said, do we sometimes make a list, or do Black females make a list that sometimes eliminates good quality candidates because and I'm not going to say from a financial standpoint, but because they don't check off every box on that list,
right,
it hinders them from going into a constructive relationship. And I'll say this, and then I want to hear your response. My oldest daughter, her husband is a truck driver. Now, her profession, she went to medical school. She's now in her residency doing, for plastic surgery. So she is a doctor. Now, her husband, who she loves, but he's building his career, and he's building something in the trucking industry. A lot of people will look at that as you do that, the two careers don't match. But but it was love that they've grown into. But he's still someone I love him and love what he brings to my daughter's life. And I asked him, I said, so if you saw that, would you eliminate him just because that's where he was in love? So say you're in your career now, if you met him, would you eliminate that person because he didn't check off he's not in my profession field? So I give you that just as, something I talk to them about. Do we sometimes put ourselves in a position where no, love is not enough, but we create a list to eliminate, to me, quality individuals who could actually add to your life?
So does that happen? Sure, yes. But I think the key is everyone having to come to their own individual understandings of what they want and what they need.
Okay.
So one of the tasks or exercises that I do with people is what I call the ideals list. And you can really make this list for any part of your life. So it could be career, it could be finances. And I do it a lot when it comes to your ideal romantic partner, your ideal, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever. It's really simple in terms of, I literally say you woke up tomorrow and could wave a magic wand and create the perfect person for you. What would be their physical attributes, their personality attributes, their life circumstances? Just list them, I don't know, brown hair, doesn't smoke, has, 2 kids. Just list everything, right?
He almost got you, sis. I thought she was coming for you. The brown hair, doesn't smoke. She said 2 kids, not 3. So, I'm sorry.
No. So
I'm sorry, we giggle and laugh sometimes.
So then you're just listing all of these qualities and these attributes. And then I say, go down that list and check or put a star or whatever to all of the things that are a deal breaker for you. And what I'm defining as a deal breaker in this case is, if this person, let's say, I don't know, you have 50 things on this list. If this person's checking off like 40 of them, but this thing isn't checked off, and you say, oh no, then I can't be with them, then that's considered a deal breaker. It's important to, first of all, know what we want, but it's also very important to know what we need. So I'll just use a random example. Say it's very important to you that they're a non-smoker. Like, that's something that you can't do. So they might have, I don't know, the educational background that you want. They might, have, the physical attributes you want, but they smoke a lot. You might say, even though all these other things are there, that's great, but I just won't be able to deal with that. Yeah. That would be a deal breaker for you, right? So first, I want people to list their wants and needs, their general sense of attributes they want. Then go over that list again and star the deal breakers. Then I have people ask themselves. So actually, I can do this with people who are single, who again aren't in a relationship, and you can do this with people who are in a relationship. If I'm doing it with somebody who's single, I say to them, ask yourself, do you think that the person that you have listed on this list, do you think that in the almost 7 billion people in this world, that this type of human exists, right? This is a nice check-in on where are my expectations, that sort of thing, right? So say they say yes, in all the 7 billion people in the world, I'm sure that somebody like this exists. Then I ask, do you think that you are capable of meeting a person like this? Because if your answer is yes, then good. You're like, okay, it's reasonable. If your answer is no, this might be bringing up things around the circles you run in, who you're exposing yourself to. Like, because if you're saying that in the world, this person does exist, but I'm probably not going to meet them, then that's, now we're looking at a question of more of you as an individual and lifestyle and things like that. And not in any judgmental way, but just in like, if this is the type of person I want to meet, where am I? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Then to kind of get more to your question of like, okay, will we eliminate people who could be a good match? It's really about realizing that relationship issues, it's not one size fits all. I think a lot of people come into therapy and they sit in front of me and they ask questions that they want me to answer on it. Like, isn't this right? Doesn't this make sense? And I know that it is not the answer that people want, but I explain to them, it doesn't matter. It does not matter if I think that is right. It matters of, does that work for you? A prime example about a big question. Either people ask it or they want to ask it, but they don't because they're like, oh, they feel like they shouldn't. You can ask, but should I break up with him or her? I'm like, okay, on paper, everything you listed to me maybe sounds like they're not a particularly nice person. They don't really treat you very nicely. They're not, really cool. But if I told you today, yes, you should break up with them, when you leave this office, I'm not the person who has to get home to your house and tell them to leave. I'm not the person who has to sleep in the bed without them. I'm not the person who has to experience the loneliness that you may experience in telling them to go, even though you logically know they aren't great for you. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's all the things.
Absolutely.
So regardless of whether on paper I'm like, oh yeah, it sounds like they don't really treat you, I am not going to have to actually be the one to go through the emotional and logistical process of what it means to split from that person. And again, this is not just regarding breakups. This could be leaving a job. This could be any decision that people oftentimes come to therapy wanting to make or figure out. What I say is, I'm here to help guide you in thinking about what is right for you, because I will not walk in your shoes and I will not live your experience through whatever decision you happen to make here. So going back to that question of like, what it's about is you. This is why I say this ideals list can be used for any part of your life. Career. Should I leave this job? Should I look for a new job? You need to list what are the things that I need and want in my life around this particular topic. And then that can help you start to make a determination of, yeah, so say you're in a relationship with somebody, you can make the same list and say, this is what would be ideal to me if I could, again, create this ideal person for myself. Is the person I'm with matching up on the key important qualities that maybe I listed as my deal breakers and stuff like that? This is not about somebody checking off all 100 attributes and saying that, someone has to be a perfect, person. But this is about if 10 of these attributes are things that I cannot deal with or I have to have, is that person checking off those things? And if they don't check off those things, to your point, does it mean that they're not a quality person? Not necessarily. But does it mean that they're ideal for me and what I need and what I can offer them if they did a list regarding me? Yeah. And the answer there may be no, they're not. So if a deal breaker for you is that the person has a certain type of career, regardless of how somebody else may feel about that or may judge that, you still are the person who has to live with that person and build a life with them. So if that is a very important thing to you, then it just is. And could it be acknowledging that that is a really quality, decent, cool person? They absolutely could be. But maybe then they're a great person for someone else. And let them be that great person for someone else. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, yes. It is very unique to, or should be very unique to the individual. I think sometimes we fall into a trap of feeling like there are certain ideals and standards we need to meet, and this goes with this and that goes with that. And so we will put ourselves in those situations. But if we really sit and reflect on what I want and need as an individual, it may not actually line up. And that is a fast track to being to discontent and being unhappy in a relationship, because you're not really addressing your needs, wants, and desires. So.
Okay. And I think I have so many questions, but I don't want to take up all of your night because you have babies to go home to. When we spoke previously, we had a conversation about therapy and the Black community and church. And you had some ideas, or I guess I had questions, because my thing was I wanted to make sure that we touched on that subject, that you can see a therapist, you can see a counselor, you can also pray. It's not that they're exclusive to each other. Right. It can be a blend of. So I just wanted to kind of get your ideas on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree that if you follow a certain religion or you're spiritual or you have certain practices, I think that that's a wonderful thing, because it can be a coping tool in the process of healing. So I do think that sometimes people can fall into a trap of leaning only on religion to help resolve things that also can be helped with therapy, and other things. I think it just comes down to, again, you as a person and an individual and what helps you. So there are plenty of people who aren't needing to go to therapy. They don't end up going to therapy. They're able to seek their religious guidance and feel like they're coping. And so if that's what's happening, fine. There's not a problem. What it is this idea of, like, when we are trying to use certain coping tools in our lives and we realize they're not handling the issue completely, then you might look to, okay, maybe I need to supplement this with therapy. Again, to keep using the medical reference, I have a cough and I'm at home and I buy some cough medicine and, I try to handle it that way, or I take some Tylenol or whatever, right? Before I go to the doctor, maybe it clears up on its own. My headache goes away if I take some Tylenol. But I'm taking Tylenol and I keep taking Tylenol and this headache's just not going away. Maybe I should start getting a bit concerned and decide that I need to supplement this with something else. Now I'm going to go into the doctor and say, doctor, I've been trying the things that I know that help a headache. I've been making sure I drink water so I'm not dehydrated. I've been taking my Tylenol. I've been getting enough sleep. And you know what I mean? My headache's still here. Mm-hmm. Do you have some other thoughts? That's how I see the idea of religion and therapy being able to work hand in hand.
Now that's, like I say, you have this is a conversation that go on forever. What about those individuals? Because there are certain individuals who challenge that way of thinking with, your faith should be enough, and your faith may be an issue, and not getting into the religious, not trying to get into a particular denominational or religious viewpoint, but if someone is battling within themselves, not talking to the religious leader, but someone's battling within themselves and they feel as if, my faith is in question if I doubt my pastor who's telling me, using that analogy, yes, I'm still coughing, but I'm coughing and it must be something wrong with me because my faith is not strong enough to take the cough away.
And the guilt that is attached to that.
Because that's something that's often said, like if you need anything outside of God, then that's a sign of your weakness, your weak, the lack of faith that one person may have. So how would you help that individual for them to understand that it's not a betrayal of your faith to sit and to have these conversations?
Right. So at this point, if the person's already in my office, which means they decided, okay, I'm at least going to try this therapy thing, right?
Yes,
I start talking about it from a very practical standpoint, because to be honest, I don't consider myself qualified to speak on it from a religious standpoint in terms of being a religious leader or anything, right? I can talk about it from the therapeutic standpoint. So what I would be bringing up is, this is about your mental and emotional well-being. And so what you may want to ask yourself, or what you do want to ask yourself is, if I have been leaning on my faith to help get through whatever this is, or to heal or recover from whatever is going on for me, and I have not gotten relief or enough relief to feel okay, do I not owe it to myself to seek out other options? And, in a sense, what do I have to lose? And what one might say is, what I have to lose, like you said, is the sense of guilt because my faith isn't enough. From a mental health standpoint, I find it, unfortunate that people end up in this bind of guilt and shame or embarrassment, because again, kind of going a bit with like the stigma of mental health in the Black community, it keeps them from healing, it keeps them from help, and so my conversation with them when they're at the point of being in my office for like a first session is around, let's talk about the things that are concerning you in your life right now. And let's talk about things that might be helpful in addressing them. And you can be able to think on it for yourself of whether it might be worth, coming to the next session, seeing how that goes, going to it might have to be in steps and stages. We might have to go slowly. But my hope is that they would see enough relief in that process to realize and accept that they can have both their faith and therapy as an intervention to help with the healing process.
Awesome. This has been so good. We appreciate all of your time.
Absolutely.
We'll be, reaching out to you in the future because we feel like there's such a need to hear us talk about the issues within our community that affect our mental health. And so many people assume that you have to be going crazy in order to talk about mental health. And they don't understand that you have mental wholeness, mental well-being that is attached to this, because it's not like you became a therapist so that you can listen to problems all the time. You're trying to solve these things, throughout your sessions. And we want to help people. We want to soften the conversation. And that's who we are. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, what are your handles on social media, your website, different things like that?
So the best way to kind of keep up with what's going on with me, I definitely have some things that I'm trying to do within the next year. One of them is to put out an online course around healing from heartache. So you can find me on Instagram at therapist.tracie. So that's the word therapist.tracie. And so if you follow me there, then you'll be able to have access to anything that's going on with me, because I'll always post. I'm putting together an email list in which I will have people sign up to get some, freebies in terms of different tips around self-care, healing, things like that. So again, if you follow me there, you'll get access to all of that as I release it and as I post about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for talking to us. We will reach out to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Good night.
Bye-bye.
We at All Up in Your Business podcast would like to thank therapist Tracie Pinnock. We appreciate her words of wisdom and her professional opinion. We hope that you have learned something from this interview and that you understand that therapy can be your friend and not your foe. We hope to talk to you soon. Peace.